Sure, sure. So the economy is hitting different people in different ways. Some companies have been very successful throughout the pandemic or the recent recession. The construction industry has been pretty good. Just like in any industry, though, there's good operators and bad operators. So, obviously the people that are struggling were struggling before, and it's just sort of this whole thing sort of exacerbated things a bit. There's other businesses that are really struggling, like companies that supply the hospitality industry, or companies that supply, they're involved in the media, like usually it's bars and restaurants, things like that advertise on radio stations and things. And so a lot of these companies that would typically have survived on advertising revenue or revenue from for, let's say, a wholesale food business, from the restaurant business or entertainment, they're suffering. And so what happens is in those instances, the accounts receivable managers, credit managers, are they've got to get a good grasp of their accounts receivable quickly, right? So if you have a big book of business that you've got, number one, you got to figure out if your customer is even still in business. So you got to make those phone calls and try and determine if that company is even still around. And if they are, to try and secure some sort of payment agreement right away. The longer it takes them to kind of penetrate that book of business, the more likely that some of these operators are going to go out of business, and you'll have missed your opportunity. So that's really the key, is to get on the inventory right away. And when I say inventory, I mean each one of your customers that owe you money, right? So you might want to segregate that list by balance, work your highest balances and down, just to, whatever efforts you do put in, you get the biggest impact on. And then you find out if there's any surprises in there, like if there's disputes or there's credit notes that should have been issued, things like that. But now is a good time to have those discussions. I don't think you should automate that process. A client came to me and was wanting to automate that and create like a data campaign. This is business. People are doing business with other people, right? And now is a good time for a great touch point with your customers. And so if you can have a live body making those calls and almost segregating your customer list based on what you believe is a probability of recovery, now's the time to do that. I mean, the industries that have been most heavily impacted, like you take Toronto, for example. So in Ontario, they had to recently shut down major social gatherings. Gyms are closed again. Bars and restaurants are closed only for takeout. And so if your sales revenue if you're a restaurant, your sales volume is 100% and you're knocked back down to 25, it is so difficult to run your business with 25% of your business as opposed to the 100%, because your expenses are still the same. You got to keep the power on, you got to pay the mortgage, you got to do all that kind of stuff, but you only have 25% of the revenue to do it. So it's almost tougher to run at 25% capacity than it is if you had the bars and the restaurants back open again. So I think there's going to be I shouldn't say I think, I know there's going to be some issues with that. But on the flip side, like I said, on the construction side, a lot of companies have done very well. There's lots of private construction. There's lots of infrastructure projects going on. Now, if you're a property owner, now would be a good time to build. I mean, prices are deflating a little bit. People are being a bit more cautious, and so if you can afford to do it, and a lot of smart developers are doing this, now's the time to build, because you can get good pricing, and so when your project is complete, after the year or two that it takes to build the building, by that point you hope that we're out of this pandemic and things are kind of crawling back to normal, and you should have a great asset.